Hello, and welcome to HORRORific Tales. In this show, we celebrate the creation of independent authors and aspiring writers. Please like and subscribe and share these episodes so we can help our talented friends get as much exposure as possible. We'd also appreciate it if you could support our artists by following them on their individual platforms and by purchasing their works. Details on how to do this are in the episode description. This HORRORific tale is a submission as part of the Horror MAYhem event created by the Bookish Bryants. This week we celebrate Gothic Horror. Join us now as we present At the End of a Pistol by C.C. Adams. Lizzie gave a tentative smile of relief. George was right. They had each other, and more importantly right now, they needed each other. What family would do was... I'm surprised we didn't see that Robin fellow. Lizzie froze. If I see either one of you again, I swear I'll bloody kill you. Lizzie? I was saying I was surprised we didn't see that Robin fellow. Oh, I hadn't noticed. Quite surprising, actually. I have it on good authority that he likes his gin. Not a big step up from beer in a time of crisis, eh? Lizzie drew back and shot him a look of derision. Why are you telling me this? A short laugh. Because it's noteworthy. I must have seen that fellow every day in the run-up to Father's funeral, and now there's no sign of him. I also hear tell that the man was a thief and a pickpocket. I dare say someone found out and scared him away. No wonder no one's seen the man. Abruptly Lizzie stood up, her chair falling backwards in the process, only to be caught deftly when George flung out a hand. Lizzie? Chair still balanced in one outstretched hand, George looked up at her, his gaze weary. Lizzie? Are you alright? Gaze flitting here and there, like a bird fluttering in a cage. I think I need to lie down. She left the room as George righted the chair. Slowly and incredulous, headed upstairs, her foot ringing out smartly on the wood. Shut the door behind her and braced her back up against it, hyperventilating. If I see either one of you again, I swear I'll bloody kill you. She crossed to her bed and sat down slowly as an old maid next to her bedside chest. Beyond the bedroom window, the warm glow of a sunset, framed by green drapes, cinched away from the window by golden ties, casting Lizzie's memories back to another sunset. Robin caught red-handed, empty-handed. She had seen to that. She and George made sure Father was buried elsewhere. Robin, drunk and pathetic, lost for words. Sighing, she bent down and reached for the bottom drawer of the little chest. Slid it open, the grating of wood ominous in the quiet, like the opening of a miniature coffin. Reached inside until her fingers closed around something cool, metallic and hard. Brought it out and laid the pistol on her lap. Pepper box, she mouthed, tracing the frame's engraving with her fingertip. It seemed like such a strange name for a pistol. A pepper box. But there it was. Everyone had them as a matter of personal safety. That's why you had it. That's not why you used it. A lovely handle, walnut or mahogany. Rich, dark and polished wood. Metal screws through the handle. Curled floral engraving on the metal of the frame. Allen's patent on the handle. It was a beautiful little thing. But that isn't why you used it. Nausea rose in her like a shore-bound wave as she pressed a hand to her mouth, swallowing, eyes closed. At least when you die, no one will ask where you're buried. Two of them, that drunkard Robin and his pathetic stooge James, both men at the end of a pistol, as she swung it between them. She fired, hitting neither of them. Neither man waited to give her a second chance, and, already trapped in the grave, both dove into the empty coffin then unearthed, screaming and squabbling as they closed the lid on themselves, before she fired a shot into the lid of the coffin. You listen here now, both of you. If I see either one of you again, I swear I'll bloody kill you. Whispers from inside the coffin. And then she proceeded to shovel the dirt back in, burying them. Both men were most certainly dead. I didn't. None of the shots fired had hit either man, but they were most certainly dead now. Lizzie hefted the pistol, horrified when her finger slipped through the trigger guard and across the trigger. Feeling it depress even momentarily was too much, and she recoiled in horror. The pistol hit the floor with a thud, her heart pounding in her chest, compounding her nausea. That sickness you feel? That's guilt. I didn't mean to. And yet, 2 men are dead because of you. That makes you a murderer. I didn't mean to. Murderer. I didn't. Lizzie? Beyond the bedroom door, George's voice accompanied by the weight of his footsteps. Hurriedly, Lizzie scooped up the pistol and stuffed it into the furthest reaches of the drawer before shoving it shut. A knock at the door. Lizzie? She sat back on the bed. Back straight, prim and proper, smoothing her dress. Come in. George came in, gently closing the door behind him. Concern clouded his features. His lips parted in hesitation. Are you all right? I'm quite all right. His footsteps, slow and cautious. He made his way to the window and stood at one side, watching the sunset, hands behind his back, with one hand clasping the wrist of the other. George? With the sun having set further, George appeared more in shadow, although Lizzie noted that he hung his head. Whatever he was going to say wouldn't be easy. Lizzie, he began, I don't want to sound like an old fusspot, but I do worry about you. I know you do, she said through clenched teeth. That's very sweet. He turned away from the window, hands still behind his back. Just remember that, even at a time like this, well, life goes on. Something that Thomas Browning knows only too well. Thomas? Oh yes, I rather like the fellow. Comes from a good family, and trustworthy. Granted, his head may be in a book more than it is in the real world, but there's something to be said for a man that willingly educates himself. I dare say he'll be most receptive of the joys that life has to offer, including that of a spirited woman. You might just bring out the best in each other, if you were to marry. Thomas, barely a man, but well-mannered and earnest. At least his humour extended past the likes of pantalettes. George turned on his heel, stopping at the larger chest of drawers opposite the bed to regard the ornament at the top. What did you say this contraption was? Lizzie looked over her shoulder at him, his fingertip on the rim of the drum, rotating it back and forth. That's a zoetrope. I see. He peered inside. Around the base of the drum, the strip of paper displayed a black and white sequence of prancing men, grinning as though juggling their own head with their neighbour was the funniest thing ever. George gave it a spin, the whir of the drum breaking the silence. And it makes these fellows look as if they're actually moving. That's right. He straightened and folded his arms. I think I remember this being called something else. Such as? A furtive glance before he leaned forward, his look conspiratorial. The will of the devil, he whispered. He broke into a smile and then left the room, closing the door gently behind him. Lizzie turned away from the door in indignation. Will of the devil indeed. Pure and simple, the contraption was called a zoetrope, nothing else. As for why it was called a zoetrope, she didn't know and didn't care. She sniffed in disdain and caught a scent of earth. Lizzie shook her head. The window was closed, and when George stood by the window earlier, he hadn't opened it. You're a murderer. I never shot them, because your aim was so frightfully bad. If I wanted to kill them, I would have. But you did. You buried those men. Oh. Slowly Lizzie sat forward, focused on her hearing, whirring from the other end of the room. She looked incredulous. The zoetrope in the big chest of drawers was still spinning. Had been since George had first spun it. But that was minutes ago, and it didn't have the power to keep turning by itself. Not for so long. Easing herself off the bed, Lizzie went over to it. The drum still whirring, the sound conspicuous in the silence. Through the slits in the drum, animated black and white figures, a leering and suited man gaily removing his head and passing it to his identical neighbour. Will of the devil. Cautiously Lizzie raised a hand to the drum and pinched its rim. The drum lurched in her grip. Such was its momentum. But at last, it was still. The grinning men inside the drum indifferent. Lizzie frowning at them. Until eventually her attention was diverted by a nearby copy of the Pickwick Papers. Exquisite it was too, bound in green Moroccan leather, with gilt towels and tooling to the spine. And so she brought the book back to her side of the bed and read, relaxed, even joined her brother downstairs for a portion of summer before retiring to her room. Night ushered in by an uneventful sunset, settled over the city. Norwood included, in the home of the Winwoods, like many others, all was still. The downstairs rooms, the staircase, the upstairs rooms, all shrouded in darkness. In the Winwood home, cold air drifted along floors, seeping through crevices between the door and its frame. Lizzie, one arm across her stomach as she slept on her back, murmured, eyelids twitching. Two men, standing in the grave beside an empty coffin. James, flushed beneath dirty blonde hair, Punch straining at his shirt. Robin, cleaner but more haggard, stinking of gin. That's the right place for you. At least when you die, no one will ask where you're buried. Robin, a worthless layabout. James, impressionable, the mindless sheep to Robin's wolf. Both men fearful at the end of the pistol. Both men diving into a coffin as she fired. A warning shot bit into the wood as they closed the lid on themselves. Screams became fearful moans, drifting up through within the confines of the coffin. Now listen here, both of you. If I see either one of you again, I swear I'll bloody kill you. Finally, she put her pistol away. Shuffling and whispers rising from the grave. I'll bloody shut you up. Reaching for the shovel and throwing dirt back into the hole. No more Robin. Murder. No more James. Murderer. More dirt landing in the grave, piling in a mound on the coffin's lid, until it began to whir over the sides. Wood gradually disappearing under shovelfuls of earth, obscuring the outlines of the coffin. Whir. Whir. And Lizzie's eyes snapped open in the darkness. Brief disorientation in the transition from sleep to consciousness. Silhouettes resolving themselves in the gloom. The drapes framing the window. The chest beside her bed. The cabinet at the foot of the bed. The zoetrope, still turning. Whirring. Stiffening, Lizzie looked at the door. Closed. Looked back at the zoetrope. Whirring. Goosebumps crawled across her skin in violent shudder. Eyes wide, she scanned the room. Not only was the door closed, but also nothing about it looked disturbed from when she came up earlier. A look at the window returned the same conclusion. Rolling onto her side, she reached and fumbled for the bedside chest, fingers groping downward until she found the bottom drawer, yanked it open and thrust her hand inside, rummaging around blind. Nothing but fabric, some smooth, some embroidered. No! Frantic now, her fingernails scraping the bottom of the drawer, loud enough to frighten her more. One nail almost bent backward, still coming up with nothing but fabric. Oh no! Not wanting to accept this, Lily slowly rolled back, bed linen dragging with her as she did so. Across the room the zoetrope was still whirring. This can't be real! Jaw clenched, Lizzie clutched tentative handfuls of bed linen and peeled it away from their body. Cool air settled on her like a mist as she swung her feet off the edge of the bed and sat up, getting to her feet. The zoetrope looked closer as she approached it, each grinning man passing his head to his neighbour. Standing over it revealed nothing out of the ordinary apart from the fact that it was still spinning. Nothing else on the chest was out of place. There was no additional machinery that would account for the fact that it was still turning. She flung out a hand, grabbing it awkwardly. This time it resisted in her grip and buckled to one side. The rattling of it on the chest wood made her yelp. She then tensed, petrified. Silence returned to the room. Bringing her other hand up, she gently righted it. Behind her, the figure lying on its back on the floor lay motionless. Dead, milky eyes stared from under a mop of shaggy blonde hair in the direction of the dresser. It occurred to Lizzie that the air was colder around the dresser, much colder. She folded her arms, clasping them to her sides under her armpits. The air felt not only cold, but dank, and the scent of earth had returned, vague and diffuse. At last she circled back to the bedside chest and knelt in front of it. putting out the drawer completely allowed for a full search of its contents. But the end result was the same. Well, we hope that you enjoyed our latest horrific tale. If you want to keep up to date with future episodes, then subscribe to our YouTube channel and like or follow our social media pages. You can also give the channel support by visiting our merchandise store and picking up some of our items. Please also take a moment to support our contributing artists who very kindly lend their talents to the show. Check out the links in the description on how you can do this. Well, that just leaves me to say, until next time my friends, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.